Hello and welcome to the Soulful Valley podcast. If you're a regular listener, thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. If you're new here and don't know me yet, I'm your host, Katie Carey, independent publisher of books that matter and an international best-selling author, and of course, the host of this globally ranked podcast. I help metaphysical coaches and healers gain confidence, clarity, raise their visibility and their credibility, giving them the opportunity to shine their light brighter so that the people they are here to serve can find them. I do this by creating opportunities for them to become best-selling authors in my multi-author and solo book projects. I also offer one-to-one mentorship services to help spiritual business owners find and unlock their limiting beliefs. In this podcast, I'll be sharing wisdom from myself, coaches, authors and energy healers that could be just what you need to transform your life today. You can connect with me via the Contact Katie button at my website at www.soulfulvalley.com.
You gotta love yourself with all your heart. If you don't already, it's time to start. 'Cause nothing's gonna work out until you do.
Hello and welcome back to the Soulful Valley podcast. I'm coming back to you with the Energy of Money series, and we still have 4 more episodes to deliver on this series over the next few weeks, which I'm really excited about sharing with you. This year we have 3 book collaborations: Becoming the Manifesting Diva, estimated to launch in June. We still have a couple of author spaces for that, but we're really excited now as the chapters have started rolling in. And we've got another Soulful Poems collaboration for you, book 3 in the series. We've still got several poet spaces if you want to submit your poetry, and a 3rd book in the series for Evolving on Purpose has been birthed, and it's called Evolving on Purpose, Akashic Journeying to Wealth Consciousness. I just thought I would let you all know about these magnificent opportunities that we've created for 2024. I'm also supporting a couple of clients with their solo books starting from tomorrow, and I've got 1 more space for a solo author who either wants to be coached in creating her book or has already created a book and needs help with the publishing and a launch. If that's you, check out in the show notes. All of my opportunities will be linked there. And for now, it's back to the episode you came here for. Joanna Hunter, an international metaphysical teacher, author, speaker, and channel for the transcendent collective consciousness known as Skylar, is on a soulful mission. She's here to weave the teachings of Skylar into the fabric of Earth, reviving magic, abundance, and a profound connection to Source. Joanna brings a refreshing, no-nonsense approach, often hailed as the most down-to-earth woo coach you'll ever encounter. You can connect with Joanna at joannahunter.com. Hello, and welcome back to the Soulful Valley podcast, Joanna Hunter.
Hello, a warm welcome to everybody listening, but thank you so much for having me back on your podcast. It's great to be back here.
You're so welcome, Joanna. And although you've only ever been on the podcast in the first series until now, you've been brought up on my podcast quite often, so I'm sure people already know who you are. But you've been a huge part of my journey since 2020, and the Energy of Money series, I couldn't think of anyone better to end the series with than you. Because a lot of my journey has been around my relationship with money.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship with money. When you first entered my world, should we share that story? Because I think that's such an awesome story, because it was such a it was the first time I'd ever made an offer like the one that I made when you first came in on the angelic activation that we did.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'm going to go back a little bit further so that people understand why my journey with money is such a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really because my journey with money in childhood was one of violence around money constantly at home. So I think that's been why, even though I've been on lots of conscious the money boot camp where we first met, things like that, and I've done the EFT training, there was still something that went deeper. And it's been on my journey with you that I've had the most growth, that I've witnessed consistency with a regular flow of money coming in for several months in a row. And then I've witnessed my emotions crashing it and stopping it again. So when I first came to you in April 2020, you put an offer out, or when I first found you, you put an offer out of pay what you can. And at the time, it was the dreaded COVID, which stopped the business that I was running dead in its tracks, because it was a travel business and an eBay business selling pre-loved clothing. So nobody wanted to buy pre-loved clothing in the pandemic, and obviously nobody could book a holiday. So everything had stopped. And then you appeared on a post of yours on Denise's group, and you were offering, well, you weren't offering the workshop. I went to look at you because of your post. So then I found that you were offering this angel workshop, and I paid $11.11, and that was the most I had access to at the time. And that's where it started. I jumped.
So from my perspective, I channel a collective consciousness called Skylar. And I often just do what I'm told. I've learned that arguing with them doesn't really work. Just, get with the program. Life works out better that way. So I've been asked to do this 444 portal angel workshop. And it gets to just before the workshop. And I get told to do pay what you want. I was like, what? Let Joe Blogs, let the great audience of the world choose what they want to pay for this. And my anxiety just went through the roof. I was like, oh my God. So I had to sit with it for about 3 days before I even made that offer. And it was funny because what it did for me was bring up some of my money stuff. And it brought up my trust of the universe. It brought up an issue with my trust of the universe, not the universe's trust of me, but my trust of the universe. And I thought, well, if people get the option to pay whatever they want, surely they'll pay 1 pence, And I was not trusting, and I had to sit with it. And then when I got to a place that I was okay, and I said, okay, let's do this. I mean, whatever happens, and I let go of any attachment to what other people paid me. And I let go of any attachment. And I made the offer from an open and grateful heart, which is what I always choose to make my offers from. And I was able to hold, come what may. I was just like, let's go, que sera on this, the song, que sera, sera, what will be, and I just let me be in that vibe, let me be in that frequency. It's now in the hands of the universe. And not only did it become at that time my most successful workshop ever, but it was also one of my most highly paid workshops ever, because people paid anything from, yes, there was somebody who paid 1 cent, of which it cost actually more to process that transaction than receiving of the 1 cent. But there was people who paid right the way up to, I think it was $222 and everything in between, right? But what was so beautiful was people like yourself that wrote to me and said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would never have been able to attend this had it been, more. And the fact that I got to choose myself meant I could say yes. And that meant more to me than anything else in the world in that moment. I just realized, yeah, this is what it's about. This is what it's about. But I also realized that I had to face some of my own kind of money demons, if you like, of like trusting. And it took a lot for my energy to be in that place of what they were obviously trying to teach through me to get to this level of trust and trust that the universe will provide. And of course, as I leant back into that trust completely and utterly, not only did I end up with my most successful workshop ever, but also my most highly paid workshop ever at that time. And the other thing as well that was phenomenal was how much crap it brought up for people when they get faced with choosing their own amount that they're going to
Yeah, because you feel guilty if you think that something's worth a lot more as well.
Yeah, and
But
it
you
really
can only
brings up
manage
your stuff, right?
to invest a certain amount. Yeah, it does
And
bring
I
it.
would never have made that offer unless I could have held every single amount. The only thing I made an agreement with myself. I would not accept zero. And we actually had 4 people that keyed in zero. And we just said, no, sorry. If you want to be part of this, you know, the spirit of this is that you contribute something, you know, but we will not accept zero, because it is an exchange here of energy. But that was it. And it was so interesting because so many people were kind of unable to hold the frequency. I'm just looking at my clock right now. It says 11:11,
Of course.
which is what you paid, which is amazing. How cool is that? But what was so amazing was that, and how often, like, let's put this to your listeners. How often do you do something, or do you offer something, or do you say yes to something, or do something where you can't actually hold the frequency of it? Right? It's quite a juicy question to think about. You know, are you able to say, okay, I am going to pay this, or I am going to do this, or I'm going to offer this, and then I'm going to hold the frequency of it. And I'm going to really, at that point, after that decision has been made, I am not going to question and doubt from that point onwards. And it's actually quite a tricky energy to be holding. And I think when it comes to money, it almost becomes trickier. It's like this other layer, right? Because we tie so much stuff up into money. You mentioned guilt, feeling guilty. Did I pay enough? Did I not pay enough? Oh God, will she think I'm, you know, and you start having this entire new narrative. What's exciting in a situation like that is that as you start having that entirely new narrative in your mind, what's really exciting from my perspective and my point of view is that you start to hear a whole monologue of your own creation. Because you might go, oh, she probably thinks I'm like really, really cheap, or she probably, you know, like, and you know what? Like, I was like, I didn't make that offer. If I would not have made that offer if I knew I couldn't hold the energy of it.
Yeah.
So I was really in very much the vibration, the frequency of que sera, what will be, will be. And the only thing that I had done for myself, for my own energy, was like, if you say zero in that box where you key in, we will be saying, sorry, you're not getting to come on this. But if you want to offer something, and it could even be like 1 cent, we will say yes. Because at the end of the day, the spirit was that they had to make, you know, put in something into it. And it was, you know, but isn't it funny when we start to observe that? Because how often, and that opportunity of that workshop was the opportunity that everybody got, being in that workshop, of really questioning their stuff, you know, and hearing that narrative and hearing what your mind makes up.
And we do this in other areas of our lives as well, because the more work I've done on the money, the relationship with money, the more I've seen it in other people, the way they talk about their romantic relationships and what they believe someone's thinking about them. It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Making up all these stories.
Complete fabricated story. Whole complete fabricated story. And it's fascinating. It is a pass the popcorn moment when you hear this stuff spilling from somebody else and you're like, wow, that's a lot. But the thing is, they're having to navigate all of that, and none of it is true.
Yeah.
And I've done it myself, so I'm not sitting here judging.
Yeah, we slip back into it, don't we?
I've
We do slip
literally
back
done
into
this
it.
myself.
We slip back into it, but we notice it when other people are doing it, probably more so now.
But it's funny. I mean, I had somebody recently in the $1 Million Experiment, and and I had commented on one of her posts, and it was at the time where we were dealing in my business with an actual copycat who had actually taken my sales page and copied and pasted it. So there was no inspired by. It was a complete, IP violation of like copying and pasting. And then this other lady who is also in the experiment, I had commented on one of her posts and said something positive. And she wrote me a massive email. And part of the email was like, I need to get out in front of this. And basically, she was also running an experiment that was completely different to mine. And her branding was completely different, of which she showed me because she sent me a link to her branding. And, but her narrative, me commenting on it, apparently in her mind, and you'll find this funny because I'm not a passive aggressive person. So, she was basically like, thought it was some sort of passive aggressive, I'm watching you type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I was just probably recognized her name as somebody being in the $1 Million. She came up on my feed, and I actually had to go back and see who she was when I got this email. And I went back and I had to look, and I realized like, oh, we've been friends since 2020 or something like that on Facebook. But obviously I don't get shown everybody's because I have a lot of people on my Facebook, so I don't get shown everybody's. But obviously maybe recognized her name, left a wee comment very unconsciously, not really thought anything about it. But she sees that comment, and then she sees I'm going through that thing and puts 2 and 2 together and gets 16. And suddenly she's got this situation she's got to get in front of. And, and I'm like, only wrote that comment to be like, I'm watching you. And I thought, and it was a whole story that she'd created that she was now living out, which is why she emailed me, because she needed to put the record straight and things. And I was like, there was no record to put straight. I have no problems with people doing experiments. A problem with people using my name and using my copy word for word.
Yeah,
but
that's a bit different.
If you want, if you want to run a different type of experiment, fill your boots, like that is completely. And it's so funny, but we do this all the time. And this is one of the ways that we live outside of our truth. And the problem with living outside of our truth is that we also cut ourselves off from source, because source is not only truth, but source is also the source of everything. So while we're insistent on telling these wild stories, what happens is that we are actually living outside of our truth, and we're creating a disconnection with source, which disconnects us from our money, our wealth, our abundance, our happiness, and our joy. And we then enter into a world, which we call in my world, the void, which generates and creates suffering.
Beautiful. Now you mentioned the $1 Million Experiment. We did discuss that in the first series of this podcast, and you're doing it all again this year. So do you want to share a bit more about the $1 Million Experiment for our listeners?
Absolutely. So the $1 Million Experiment is an experiment that asks the question, can mindset and intuition training along with $1 million plan make you a millionaire in just 1 year? So I launched this in 2020, and we ran it all through 2021, and that was the year. So the 2021 all the way through to December 31st, 2021. That was the container and the year-long container that we ran. And we ended up with 16 millionaires. So the number keeps going up because people keep coming out of the woodwork and saying, but we have now got 16 people that have come forward. I actually know 3 other millionaires that did $1 million that year, but didn't come forward and say, hey, Joanna, I was in your experiment and this happened. So I've only counted the people who've actually come and contacted me. We had 4,300 participants, which then ended up making it the world's largest experiment. And we did something really, really crazy. We gave really high value coaching for $25 for a whole year. And we offered a podcast, exclusive podcast, and 52 lab notes, and on mindset and intuition training, plus my $1 million book, and you got all of that for just $25. And then, as if that wasn't massive enough, we gave an affiliate program of 50%. So anybody, if you brought 2 friends in, you made your money back. If you brought more than 2 friends in, you were now in profit and started bringing, you were starting to bring in profit and things. So the journey with $1 million experiment, the first one was, I honestly rocked up to that year. I had no idea if this would work or not work. I suspected that it would, but otherwise I would never have attempted it. But I really suspected that it would. But I wanted to show the power of the mind. I wanted to show how powerful our mindset is, how powerful our attitude is. And so that became my $1 million year. And then obviously we had 15 other people who completed that as well. But then on top of that, we had other people who completely changed their lives during that year. And I definitely think that you were one of them as well.
I'm definitely one of them. And it just came to me then that the last time we spoke about this, I think it was October 2020, when I just launched the podcast. We talked about the $1 million experiment that hadn't started yet. So it was going to start in the January. And I was really excited when you first announced this in the August 2020. And I believe now that the lead up to the experiment and then the experiment is the reason I launched the podcast. And then I went on to launch a publishing house. I had a different relationship with money because I started to see things in a different way. I started to see that instead of spending it, that I was investing it. And I got to step 15, which I was quite happy about.
Amazing. Oh, that's incredible.
So
that's incredible.
Now that you're doing it again, of course, it's a no-brainer. And I sort of feel like maybe I'm going to jump back in at step 15 because I'm about to sell my house.
Absolutely. But here's the thing with this as well, is that it's not just about reaching that goal of $1 million. Like that's the lure, if you like, right? We gotta give people something juicy on the front. But the real magic of the experiment is how it begins to change your relationship with money. Money for many, many years was this super uber stressful thing. And I was never happy with money. If I had it, it wasn't enough because it wasn't covering all the things that I wanted it to cover. And so I was mad at it for not being enough. If I didn't have it, I was mad at it because it hadn't shown up. It was one of these energies that literally couldn't do right for doing wrong by me all the time. And I was in such a toxic relationship with money because one of the things that really struck me was when Skylar said to me, my spirit team said to me, if money was a person, would it want to live with you? And I think that was a gut punch. And I realized, no. And if you were that person that was money, would you want to live with yourself? And I thought, no, God, it would be like a toxic relationship. I would not want to live with a human that was constantly angry at me. And I thought, wow. And then and that was the moment I stopped blaming money for not showing up. That was the moment for me. I was just like, I don't blame you for not showing up. I'm a little bit of a bitch, to be honest. I wouldn't want to live with myself if I was always mad at me. I was always mad at you. I wouldn't want to live with myself. So what I realized was that I could change my relationship to money. I could make myself a comfortable place for money to live. And it started with my attitude. And it started with how I spoke about money and how I treated it and how I thought about it. It started through my thought process. And so I began praising and blessing money instead. So anytime money showed up, instead of going, oh, you're not enough, like you're not going to cover this month's bills, you're just useless, like that was the toxicity, I would be like, thank you so much. Like this is going to cover these bills and I'm so delighted. So, if you want to bring more of your friends, come on over. It's great, And I started changing that attitude in that relationship. Well, guess what? Money started showing up more and more and more and more and more. And it started showing up to the point where I was brave enough to put on this crazy harebrained, absolutely ludicrous experiment just for shits and giggles to play in the field of money and to play with the energy of it. And could we get a group of people together in playful curiosity with no pressure because, hey, it's an experiment, it worked, it doesn't work. There's no failure within an experiment. The whole point of an experiment is to see and find out, And so that's what I loved about the experiment initially. Now we're going into it knowing that this works. So it's a little bit of a different vibe. I feel like this time with my audience, I'm not pulling as many punches. Like I am literally like, no, it's like this because it's like this. As opposed to before I was like, hey, well, let's all just find out together. Like now I know unequivocally, solidly, fully, it is a knowing within me that this works. And that if we change our attitude to the way that we approach things in life changes in accordance to the attitude, And so as I became more welcoming to money started showing up more and more. And as I became more grateful for money, more and more money started showing up. And I was the one that had changed. It wasn't money that had changed. And then I think the worst realization that I had of all, the one that really was like, wow, that hurts, was that money had actually always been there for me.
Yeah. And you're the one that's been stopping it all along. That's the
kicker. Always been there. Always. As mad as I had been that it wasn't enough, and as mad as I had been, the fact is I had 100% track record of getting through life, and money had always been there for me. And if anybody's listening to this, if you are here, you're listening to a podcast, hello, privilege, and B, that's A, and B, money has always been here for you, because even if you are stony broke, you have made it to the next 24 hours.
Which we've both been as well. Let's say we've both been in the position of being
we have
there
both
as well.
been. I mean, I have been homeless. I have literally lived on the good old UK benefit system, welfare to my American friends. I have been there. I have lived that reality very, very much. And I was, looking back in hindsight, I realized how many no favors I did for myself, like how many did myself not a single one favor in the stories that I was telling about that time in my life. At the time, it was like that was the time where I was super mad at money, because it was never there for me. And yet it was always there for me, because guess what? I'm still alive and I'm still kicking it and I'm still here, which means I've always had the resource of money in order to get through to the next day.
And the fact that really source is our source. And we look at all of these different ways that we expect money to come into us, especially spiritual entrepreneurs, I've noticed.
Yes.
Not happy that it's not coming in that way, and not recognizing that the other ways that it comes in to support you during the growth of your business are just as important.
I think quite often, what most people suffer from is not a lack of abundance or a lack of money, it's a lack of gratitude. And it's that is that can be a real, that energy doesn't really mess around. It can feel quite like that winded me a little bit, this idea of a lack of gratitude, because a lack of gratitude is 100% your responsibility. It's not anybody else's responsibility. It's your responsibility for how you're going to perceive life. And I realized that had been during my deepest lack, and where I was really feeling lack on every level, feeling lack in my relationships, feeling lack in my financial world, feeling lack in my fulfillment, feeling lack as a human, and feeling lack on so many levels. It was really multi-dimensional, the lack that I was feeling. I can tell you that that was probably the time in my life I also had the deepest lack of gratitude. And and if I had gone back and interviewed that version of me, and you had gone back in time and gotten your little time machine and gone back and interviewed that, Joanna would have told you, well, what do I have to be grateful for? Never mind that she was alive, never mind that she had 3 beautiful children, never mind that she had recovered from multiple organ failure, was still in the recovery of that, but it was going well. Never mind that she had a roof over her head or a car to drive or food in the cupboards. Never mind any of that, because that didn't register to me at that point in time. And of course, no wonder I perceived so much suffering in my life when I could not take the time to perceive the good in my life. I focused only on the bad and then wondered why the bad kept showing up again and again and again and again. And it wasn't until I started focusing on the good that that good started showing up, and more and more and more. And the cool thing is, when you focus on the good, it brings all its friends. Like joy and happiness and abundance and wealth and all of that good stuff. And it really is as simple as just changing your attitude with how you're choosing to perceive life.
So the 2024 $1 million experiment is a bit different this time, isn't it? Because everyone needed to join in January the last time, but you've kept it open.
Yeah, we've decided to keep it open. It was actually my husband, so we're going to blame my husband for this. But he said to me, Joanna, because he deals with all the customer service, and there's a reason why he deals with a lot of the customer service. Because it means I still have a business, because this man has the patience of a saint. I do not possess that level of patience, so it's good that he is there manning the customer service email. But he said to me, a lot of people had been writing and just saying, that they really were appreciating the affiliate program. They were saying, like, thank you so much. Like, I can't believe how much I've earned. I can't believe that this is really, really cool. And so Paul came out with this idea. He said, why are we stopping the experiment again? And I said, well, it would just get really messy. And then, like, people would be joining at different weeks. And then the group would probably be harder to navigate because we put out the content a week at a time and stuff like that. And he said, well, it sounds to me like you're switching off a money tap for your audience, because there's a lot of people who are making quite a lot of money on this, and we're bringing new people into our world all the time, which is amazing. And this idea of the money tap, because if you've read my book Get Selfish, I have the chapter called The Bathtub of Life. The taps are always on, source is always giving. And if you're not receiving, it's because the plug is either out or you've got a hole in your bathtub, right? And so you're hemorrhaging the energy and you're leaking the energy. And that if you want to experience abundance, you have to learn to plug the bath, and you have to learn to plug the bathtub up. And it's such a powerful analogy. But that also has taps, and the taps represent source. And I realized that in this experiment that I could be an agent of source for abundance. And that actually if a person who entered my experiment had enough friends, they could potentially make $1 million just from the experiment alone. It would mean that they would need to bring 80,000 of their friends in.
Yeah.
But we've done the maths on it. And the fact is that is an opportunity for $1 million right there before you've even learned a thing in the experiment or done anything else in the experiment or used any of our myriad of suggestions in the book. There's been lots of suggestions in the book for lots of different things that you can do. So I really loved this idea, and I kind of became obsessed with it. So I started really thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, how would we do it if we kept it open? How would we do it if we kept it open? So I came up with this idea, and we're still in the process of kind of implementing it, of okay, well, if we create a quick start guide for people who just jump in, that they would get this quick start guide. And if we organize the information in weeks, we could potentially keep this open forevermore. And then if you start, then that becomes your week one. And then you just follow, you've got 52 weeks. You get a year to be in the experiment. At the end of the year, obviously, you can renew and be in there for another year if you want. And I thought, yeah, this will be really fun because the power and the potency, yes, the content is amazing. It's world class, but I will own that. But the power and the potency for me is always in the community. You know, a group of people doing what you're doing, a group of people who believe in better, a group of people who are willing to go on a journey of becoming a millionaire. You know, in society, that's so rare because the moment you start putting your head above the pulpit, the moment, that's why we have sayings like tall poppy syndrome and stuff like that, because the moment that you start stepping out of that status quo, those people please are on you. They are running you down and they're going, oh, what are you doing that for? And oh, like this. So being in a group of fellow crazies, that's worth its weight in gold.
Oh, I love it.
It is worth its weight in gold, right? People who are crazy enough to believe that they can change their status quo, give me that all day, every day. Because I don't even really like hanging around with the naysayers of life. You know, being in a group like Million Dollar, it's so powerful and potent because everybody's sharing their experience, everybody's sharing their journey, but everybody has a similar goal, which is to improve their financial situation and to hopefully reach that $1 million goal. And some people are open and honest and say, well, $1 million is not really for me, but I'm here because I want to be in part of this community and I want to be part of this and I do want to improve things in my life. And other people are like 100% like $1 million, sign me up. Like I am here for the million. I am here to do this or more, which is awesome. But I love the dynamic of that because it's so dynamic in your own life to have something like that. And then you go back to like regular life and regular world and people are giving off about the price of gas and they're giving off about the cost of living and all the rest of it. And it's nice sometimes to get a little bit delulu and go and be around people who are like, hey, I'm attempting to move from step 8 to step 9 in my $1 million journey. You know, like that's powerful and potent. And I love that. I love that because for me personally, that's never going to get old. You know, that is how we change the world. And sometimes there is this power, a collective power that a very famous man who made a lot of millionaires, and he learned originally from Andrew Carnegie, who was one of the world's kind of first multi-millionaires, and his name is Napoleon Hill. And Andrew Carnegie took Napoleon Hill under his wing and taught him, and then kind of, it sounds really bizarre in today's standards, but kind of passed Napoleon Hill around all his wealthy friends, and then Napoleon Hill got to learn from all of them. And Napoleon Hill, he coined this phrase called the mastermind because he realized that one of the things that rich people did differently was that they quite often got together and discussed ideas and topics and things like that, and they brainstormed together. And what he recognized was that another mind, so say for instance you got a group of 3 people together, that there would be a fourth mind in that group, and that would be like a collective consciousness on the intention of the other 3 people in the group. And it was like the mastermind is what he coined. And I feel like that's the power that's in the group. You know, it is a mastermind of people who are going in the same direction as you, which is, you know, that gives you that permission. I know for me in my own financial journey, we've talked about Denise Duffield Thomas, which is obviously a mentor of both of ours. And, you know, one of the things for me is her group, and obviously herself have given me the permission. And it's not that Denise, you know, came down from some sort of ivory tower and said, I give you permission to be wealthy, Joanna. No, it wasn't. It was being in that community, being in that group that I thought, well, if these chicks are all doing it, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
And that was the moment I gave myself the permission. That was the moment I gave myself to say, oh, it isn't, I don't know what I thought about wealthy people back in the day, but I think I thought that they were somehow made of gold and slightly shinier than other humans, and that they were maybe somehow slightly different. But what I've come to know in the journey is it's women and men just like me and you that do it. It's not somebody extra special or extra this or extra that. It's just ordinary human beings that do it, and does not give us hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's programs like this that gives us permission as well to be open about the topic of money, which we're not generally in society, are we? Everything's hush hush. People assume, people make assumptions. I know right when I first became a best-selling author in the first book, there were assumptions that I was suddenly rich. That was quite laughable, but the way people cut me off, suddenly didn't want to know
Wow.
me anymore because they had this thing in their mind. I don't know, suddenly I'm a horrible person because I'm rich. I wasn't rich anyway at that at that point, and I'm still not. But it's something that we need to talk about more, isn't it? Money.
I think so, yeah. And I think also as well, here's another assumption that people make when they perceive you as having more money, that somehow you don't have feelings.
Mm.
Some people say the most awful things to you, which they would never say to friends that they believe aren't wealthy. But you're fair game because they perceive you as wealthy.
Mm.
Like you don't have feelings, like you're not going to be hurt.
Which is
And
another thing that puts people off of getting there, isn't it? It's another thing that cuts people off.
absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, how I've navigated this is, do I like my life better now than I did when I was stony broke and afraid for everything? Because I lived in a lot of fear. My lack created tons and tons of fear. Fear I do not experience today. I experience a lot of love in my life today instead, and I have a lot of gratitude in my life today. And so I don't have the fear that I once had. But do I like my life better today than I did, in the way that it was before? And it's no competition, really. Yes, I love my life now. And if a few ignorant people is the price that I have to pay sometimes, then I'm willing to pay it. My hope is that they come on the journey and they realize themselves is that they will change as people on the journey, but they won't stop having feelings and they won't stop. But also, as well, one of the things that really makes my heart sink to my boots, and I think this is something that through this experiment this year in 2024, is I've become more hyper aware of how people's attitudes. I get this sinking feeling in my body, and I hope I can land this for everybody listening to this because this is such a weird thing. I'm very sensitive to energy and I have very strong empathic abilities. I've always been psychic. I've always had these strong abilities. And I was getting this sinking feeling. And at first I thought, maybe it was something to do with my energy. So I started looking at my energy and I started looking at my stuff. But I wasn't getting a solution and I wasn't getting, why am I feeling like this? I'll maybe read somebody's post and then I would get that, it was like my feelings took a lift down to the basement, down to the absolute bowels of a building. And it was like, God, what is that feeling? And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then I started realizing, I thought, well, what if this is not even about me? What if this has got absolutely nothing about me, but my energy is trying to tell me something about this comment? And what I realized was, as I started to approach the feeling like that, and I started to approach it, what I realized was that attitude has so much to do with whether you are successful or not. And when people come into my world, especially like something like the $1 million experiment, they have a desire. They're declaring their desire by purchasing. They're saying, I wish to have more money. I wish to have better life. I wish to be a millionaire in some people's cases, right? I'm not whitewash, I'm not saying everybody is the same. I'm not putting the brush with everybody, but I know some people enter the experiment to improve things, and some people enter the experiment because I'm here for the goal, right? And so they've entered with this declaration. And then what I realized is that perhaps a comment or a thing that they've said or something that or a behavior that they're exhibiting, I know that it's counterproductive to the goal. And that's what creates that sinking feeling in my body. Because what I'm picking up on is their misalignment. It's they're not aligned, and there is nothing that is going to shift that but them. But that attitude, and while they keep exhibiting that attitude, and while they keep exhibiting that behavior and attitude is most likely the behavior and attitude that is standing in front of the doorway to greater power, greater wealth. And I'm not talking like power, like being a president power. I'm talking about your own personal power, tapping into that wellspring of personal power inside of you. But what they're doing is they're either their attitude or what they've said or how they've behaved in whatever behavior that they're exhibiting, that is behavior that is the counterproductive behavior to the goal that they desire. And I sat with it for quite a long time because I thought, well, what do I do about this? Because obviously I really believe that everything happens for a reason. And if I feel this, what am I to do about this? And I have a lot of things like, I don't like cancel culture. I don't like calling people out because I believe that everybody's on their own journey. If you don't like something, you're not a tree, move away from it. Use your discernment, but by all means, don't be tearing at other people. And so it was a very tricky thing for me to navigate, having this knowledge that something that they are doing is counterproductive to a goal that they have declared to me. And my highest guiding star in all of this is I truly want to genuinely help people. I genuinely want to see people thrive in my world. I genuinely want to see. But while somebody continues to engage in that type of behavior, and it's nothing personal, it's really, you keep engaging in that behavior, you're going to be that million miles away from the $1 million goal. You're not going to get there. And it's that needs to change in order to start moving yourself into deeper alignment with the goal that you have. So I think, this year I have been a lot more bigger in kind of really calling people on that and saying, and highlighting it and trying to turn it into teaching moments, which has been interesting in how it's received. Some people receive it really, really well and are saying, thank you so much. Thank you for demonstrating strong boundaries. Thank you for demonstrating this. And other people have gotten very upset. And, I haven't named any names or called anyone out, but what I've done is tried to call the behavior out. And in calling the behavior out, some people who are not even connected with a person behaving like that have literally been quite severe in the comment section, which is interesting, because it's not something I'm normally used to. But I definitely see it as an up level for myself. But I also understand that I'm here to help, and that sometimes I've received help in the past that didn't feel like help to start with. Somebody called me on my behavior or pointed something out to me, and it always feels very confronting until your ego calms down and sits down, and then you realize, oh, they're absolutely right. And
you come to a point where you recognize, don't you, that if you're being triggered by whatever it is, that is something deeper within you to look at. It's not anything to do with the other person.
Absolutely. I think there's a level of spiritual maturity when you begin to realize, I'm being triggered by this. And if I'm the person that's triggering someone else, then it's like, well, Joanna's really just the agent who's highlighting this energy inside me. And some people have been really triggered about, one woman wrote not that long ago, I'd highlighted a behavior that somebody had been extremely rude in the inbox, to the point where my lovely husband, who is so patient, ran out of patience. Now, I can count on one hand when I've seen that man run out of patience, you know. In the 27 years we've been married, we've been together 30 years. So I can count on one hand, and he ran out with patience. This person was being extremely rude. And so we made the decision just to refund them and said, listen, you're not suitable for the experiment. You know, being nice in the emails is, you know, our minimum standard. And if you can't make that minimum standard, you know, like this. And I decided to turn that situation into a teaching moment and to share it within the experiment and to share the story of it. And one woman got really offended and wrote, you know, like, how's this helping me? And was really quite rude in the comments and things like that. And it's really funny to me, as somebody who has actually achieved the goal of $1 million. And it's not like saying that we're running a dictatorship here and I'm right 100% of the time. But when it comes to money mindset, I would like to think that I may be ahead of the game of somebody who's joined $1 million experiment and has not achieved the result. So if I say something like this attitude is the thing that's maybe killing the vibe of your $1 million, it's coming from an honest and good place. But then to go ahead and think that perhaps I'm going to go ahead and start lecturing the teacher of that container.
Yeah.
I find it quite amusing, to be quite honest, more than anything. I find it amusing and cringy. And I'm cringy not for the person, but for myself, because I recognize that attitude in myself when I was broke.
In the past, yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I cringe so hard, because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God, girl, I have been there. And I know that, and I have been there. But what I find, and it's funny, you know, it is funny because I can see back in hindsight now, and hindsight is 2020. I can see all the places where I did myself no favors. And I can see all the things that I have done to create the alignment for the wealth that I have today. Right. And so it's funny when people come into the world, like I find it amusing when people come into my world and are like, well, I can't see how this is helping me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your opinion, but like nobody is making you stay here. You know, so if you don't resonate, it's okay. I'm not for you. I'm not against you. I want to see you thrive. I want to see you succeed in life, but I can only teach the willing. I can only help the willing. If you are neither, then there's nothing here, and I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. But, you know, is the thing is, are you okay with that? Because how often, and I think this has been one of the biggest lessons that I personally learned as well, is how often have you stayed somewhere that is in alignment with you?
Oh gosh.
Right. And what was your excuses and what was your reasons for staying, right?
Yeah.
Like you made like, oh, like, here's the best one. It will get better.
Yeah. This again, it comes up in relationships, doesn't it? In jobs.
Completely.
And
I mean, at the end of the day, you're having a relationship with money.
Yeah. And so it's all the same. And I know for me, when it was relationships that I stayed in too long, there was this thing in my mind telling me that I couldn't waste all the years that I'd invested in it. And that makes you hold on longer.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, that makes you hold on even longer.
That's what I see with entrepreneurs all the time. You know, I remember working with this client who had spent $25,000 to develop like some sort of all singing, all dancing signature program, none of which felt like her, and none of it was a reflection of who she really truly was. But trying to get that entrepreneur to, like, she would openly admit it's not really me, but then when it was like, okay, well, let's move on from that, you know, let's chalk that up to a learning experience and let's move on from that, and what can we create that's different? What can we create that's more you? Did not want to let go because it cost her 25K. Didn't want to let her go. didn't want to think, well, that's 25K down the toilet. But the thing is, there's never money down the toilet.
No.
Everything is an experience. Everything is teaching you something. And sometimes learning and it costing you $25,000 to learn that actually that is not you. And that learning teaches you to go deeper in on who you actually are. Well, in my humble opinion, that's worth 25K, but only if you're willing to learn the lesson that's outside the program, right? So I remember I learned this when I invested $17,000, went to one call, hated it so much, and then decided to let myself off the hook and not go to any more calls. Only time in my life I've ever asked for my money back, was told no, was told by a very prominent coach at the time just to do a call back on my cash. I refused to do that because I really believe in like energy attracts like energy. And I went into that with my eyes wide open. I said yes to it. I will honor the agreement that I made. And I paid the full $17,000. And I was not going to charge that back. But but then a few months down the line, I caught myself full on holding myself back from something that I really wanted to do because, I'd spend that money and I'd made a mistake. Right. And so now I'm not going to invest in my future.
We've just got to stop seeing these things as mistakes, haven't we?
Exactly. I got my journal out. I sat down with my journal. I had a very, very nitty-gritty, honest conversation with myself. And I realized that on some level, I was beating myself up for this perceived mistake. And I then decided to look into why did I buy that program in the first place? And the first thing that I heard my inner self say is because I should have learned that. That was my clue, the should word. It was just a giant case of the shoulds. It's as nasty as it sounds. And I thought, wow, okay. And I looked at all the programs that I bought that I had really, really like gained from, like the programs that had been an amazing investment for me. And I thought, well, what made those programs different to this program? Because I went to one call, I freaking hated it. But apart from that, like what made these different? Like what made the buying process different? Because right from get-go, I was like, I should learn this. And then I realized like I had a load of other stuff that I hadn't really engaged with that all had the should energy on it. And then I went and saw that the programs who had really, I realized that there was my desire. I desire to learn from this human, desire to be in this container. I desire to be in this group of people. There was desire there. That 17 grand was the best money I've ever spent. I didn't learn the lesson in the program that the program offered, but I did learn a very valuable lesson, one that I'm sharing with your audience today, which is never buy anything from the energy of should, only ever buy from the energy of desire. It has literally saved me thousands and thousands of dollars, and I only buy high value courses now. And I'm not talking financial investment high value, courses that are always of high value to me, because I desire to learn from that person, or I desire to be in the energy of that person, or I desire to be in the container that that person is providing. That is worth $17,000 all day, every day. And I no longer buy anything that my little ego brain says, you should learn that, because I know I have no desire to learn.
Or you have something pop up and your brain will say, oh, that's it. You need that over there.
Yeah, and it's like shiny objects. I do not engage with the shiny objects anymore. It saved me tons and tons of money.
Yeah.
And if my clients and your audience start applying this to their lives today, I guarantee you will literally transform how you buy coaching, how you buy programs, how you buy stuff, and you will start to buy things that are high value to you. It doesn't matter if the investment is $25 or the investment is, $25,000. I promise you that if you only buy from the energy of desire, you will buy the right things for yourself every single time.
Thanks, Joanna, for sharing such beautiful insights and wisdom. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
One of the things I feel like, I don't know, like this is what's coming through my channel right now, but I really feel like one of the energies, and this is your, you've done this energy money series, and I really feel like one of the energies that's really icky around money is how we often try and tie our self-worth to it. So if we've got money, we're worthy. And if we don't have money, we're not worthy. That is one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves around money. It really doesn't, and I think one of the things that I've really unpacked in my journey is if I have no money, it just means I have no money. And if I have money, it just means I have money. It is no reflection of me as a human being and a person. And I think wherever you are in your money journey and wherever you are in learning about money or learning to become a good custodian of money or bringing more money in or increasing your wealth or wherever you are in that journey, I just want you to take that home with you, that idea that your worth has got absolutely diddly squat to do with the amount of money that you've got. And unfortunately, we have entire industries that have been born on that human insecurity of like, well, if you buy this uber duper fancy thing, people think you've got money and then they'll think you're worthy. And actually, it's total BS. Your worth is non-negotiable. You were born worthy and you will finish this life as worthy. Everything in between, you are worthy. You are worthy every single second of every single day. It does not matter what is in that bank account or what is not in that bank account. It does not matter. Your worthiness is non-negotiable. And I think that's what I want to leave your audience with, because I know that so many people tie their self-worth into their money, and it's actually got nothing to do with it whatsoever. You're worthy, period. Full stop. End of sentence.
Thank you for a beautiful conversation today. Now, the rest of the series, I had a list of questions to ask people. And funnily, for my interview with you, it disappeared. So we were meant to just have the conversation exactly the way we had it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
So
I just love these chats because I just think Spirit just takes us on the journey that needs to be heard.
absolutely. Where can our listeners find you, Joanna, if they want to delve deeper into the world of Joanna Hunter?
Well, thank you. Well, hopefully, Katie will share her affiliate link
Of
for
course, I
Millionaire.
will.
So if you are not in there, get your butt over there and
I
come and
highly
join us, and
recommend
you're
it.
gonna have so much fun in there. But you will find me at joannahunter.com on my website, and then I made it super simple for everybody to find me on social media. So Joanna Hunter, COM, like com, on everything, all one word, no hyphens, no funny little characters or anything, just Joanna Hunter, COM, all one word, on any social media platform. If I'm on that platform, I will have that handle.
Thank you so much for your time today, Joanna.
You are so welcome, and thank you for having me back. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye for now.
So ask yourself, is this for me? Give yourself some boundaries. Learn to trust your intuition now.
Thanks for listening to the Soulful Valley podcast. I trust that you will have heard something today that you were ready to hear, and that it's made you feel a little lighter, more aligned and connected with your soul's purpose, and you have been reminded of who you really are and the true nature of the power that you hold within you. My aim for this podcast is to bring love, light, wisdom, raise consciousness and ease suffering. If you've enjoyed the show, go back and listen to some of the back catalogue of previous episodes. Subscribe, follow, rate and review so that you're notified when new episodes drop in, and share this podcast with anyone that you think it may help to listen to. You can connect with me at soulfulvalley.com, and if you scroll to the bottom of the website, there are links to my social media platforms.